Now this one is special. What we have here is a Yugoslav Mauser M48, chambered in 8mm Mauser, also known as 7.92 by 57. I bought it for $700, and it came exactly like you see it, covered in cosmoline, surface rust, dents and scratches all over the wood, and decades of neglect just baked into every surface. But underneath all that grime is a piece of military history that deserves to be brought back to life. The Mauser M48 has a fascinating backstory. After World War II ended in 1945, Yugoslavia under Marshal Tito found itself in a unique position. The country had stockpiles of captured German weapons and, more importantly, the technical knowledge and machinery to produce them. The Yugoslav government established the Preduzeće 44 factory, later known as Zastava Arms, in Kragujevac, Serbia, and began manufacturing their own version of the legendary Mauser 98 action. The M48 was produced starting in the late 1940s and continued into the early 1950s. It was essentially a refined version of the German Karabiner 98K, the standard infantry rifle of the Wehrmacht, but with some Yugoslav modifications. The Mauser action itself is one of the most influential firearms designs in history. Peter Paul Mauser perfected the controlled feed bolt action system in 1898, and that basic design has been copied and adapted by virtually every bolt-action rifle manufacturer in the world for over a century. The M48 retained all the key Mauser features: the massive controlled feed claw extractor, the two front locking lugs, the fixed blade ejector, the internal 5-round magazine fed by stripper clips, and that incredibly strong and reliable action. The rifle has a 23.2-inch barrel, an overall length of 43.2 inches, and weighs about 8.5 pounds. The 8mm Mauser cartridge it fires is a powerful full-size military round that was used by German and Allied forces across 2 world wars. Many of these M48 rifles were manufactured but never issued to troops. They sat in Yugoslav military warehouses for decades, packed in cosmoline, that thick amber preservative grease that the military uses for long-term storage. That's why so many of them surface today in this exact condition, coated in cosmoline, but with the metal actually well and preserved underneath. The challenge is getting all that old grease off and dealing with whatever rust developed despite the preservation. So let's get into it. Disassembly on a Mauser is straightforward, but requires patience. I'm removing the barrel bands first, sliding them off the stock. Then the upper handguard lifts off, the action screws come out, the front guard screw and the rear tang screw, and the barreled action lifts right out of the stock. The bolt comes out by pressing the bolt stop and sliding it to the rear. The trigger guard assembly with the floor plate and magazine spring detaches from the bottom. The firing pin assembly unscrews from the bolt sleeve. Every piece comes apart and goes on the bench. The cosmoline removal is a job in itself. I'm using a heat gun to warm the metal parts, which makes the cosmoline liquefy and run off. Then mineral spirits and degreaser to dissolve whatever is left. The stock gets the same heat treatment, sweating out the cosmoline that has soaked deep into the walnut grain over decades. Rags and brushes over and over until the wood stops weeping grease. With the cosmoline gone, I can see the actual condition of the metal. There's surface rust that needs to come off, and I'm going at it with steel wool and brass brushes, working carefully to save as much original bluing as possible. The bore gets a thorough cleaning with solvent and bronze brushes until the rifling is shining. Then cold blue solution goes on the bare spots where rust took the finish off, blending it with the surrounding original bluing. Multiple applications until it matches. The walnut stock gets stripped, sanded through multiple grits. The crack near the wrist gets glued and clamped, and then I'm applying boiled linseed oil. Coat after coat, rubbing it in by hand, letting each layer dry. The wood comes alive with this treatment. The grain figure starts to glow with that classic military rifle warmth. Reassembly is the reverse. The barreled action Drops back into the oiled stock, the action screws torque down. The handguard goes on, the barrel bands slide back in place, and the bolt slides home. When I cycle that action for the first time after restoration, the bolt glides like silk. That is a Mauser action, working exactly the way it was designed to over 100 years ago, from a Cosmoline-covered relic to a rifle that looks like it just left the Zastava factory. This piece of Yugoslav military history is alive again.